Hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Exponential Potential Podcast. I'm here today with our very own co-host, but today she is our special expert guest and co-starring a very sleepy Enzo.
Yeah, we've got a slightly different setup today because he's sat
Yes,
here.
yes, I love it when he makes an appearance. So today we've got a great episode. This month is all about new beginnings, fresh start, and that is around our careers, in jobs, new positions, promotions. It may be new beginning in the relationship, move to a different country or a big move. So all about new beginnings, fresh start, and also I think it, just wanted to mention any day can be a fresh start. You can start, it doesn't even need to be the beginning of a day, but the beginning of a day is a good place to start a new beginning. And today, Claire is talking about stacking the odds in your favor. So, welcome,
Yeah.
Claire. Lovely
Hey,
to be. I love our interviews when we get together like this. Um,
for
Have you
sure.
got something to add about new beginnings in general?
So I think I I definitely agree with you that new beginnings can start at any point. Yeah, and it always it fascinates me in a way that you can. I could walk upstairs now. I could grab my passport and my credit card and then start a new life in Brazil tomorrow.
Mhm.
Just
Yes.
it I can, through the power of social media, I can try on different roles. Yeah. It's just so for example, in the past I've tried on the role of swimwear influencer. Just like, but just try these aspects on, see how they fit, and then
Mhm.
move them forward. And I think there are so many different opportunities for people to start new roles, to take those new beginnings. They don't have to be serious and long term. They can be just playful, in a character sense, just to bring a little bit of freshness.
Mhm.
But I don't think we have to necessarily stay in one path or in
Mhm.
one rut.
Yes, and I want to add to that. It doesn't have to be a big change either. It could be a small change, but that could have big impact.
Yep.
So you could say to decide, okay, well, I'm going to decide. I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to make a choice to be a different way. I'm going to make a choice to be kinder today.
Yep.
Uh,
Well,
and it can be, I mean, that is, but it can be as simple as that.
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
what I wanted to do today was to pull through some of my own experience in terms of new beginnings, and then also advice that I give to people that I coach or mentor. And so for me in a corporate world, I actually kind of went through a series of promotions throughout an organization. So lots of new beginnings across teams. Some were forced, some were unforced,
Mhm.
but in a linear direction. Then jumped across to a completely different industry, and then started to forge kind of a reputation, a kind of ability to deliver in a completely different industry. And then I've jumped across again to entrepreneurship. Similarly, in my late 20s, kind of discovering that I was really good at a sport. And so I jumped into the role of international athlete. Um, but
But that.
actually, yeah, there are some core tactics, there's some core elements that enable you to make those changes.
Mhm.
My own LinkedIn profile starts with the line that anything is possible, and
Mhm.
it truly is. I think we've talked a lot about vision to help really shape and to create a direction that sings to your soul. What I want to do is bring through some practical elements of, right, okay, you're going down that path. What is it you need to consider? Kind of what are the key ingredients you need to
Hmm.
consider to help you to thrive.
Excellent, excellent. So what do you mean by, so the title is Stacking the Odds in Your Favour? What do you mean? What do you mean by that exactly? I'd love to
So,
delve in that.
so these are the strategy elements that help you kind of prepare for and navigate the transition into a new role or a new hobby, new job, could be a new relationship. And I think there are some key elements that you can consider, almost do a self assessment against, and start to adjust in order to give yourself the best possible chance to make a success of that new job, for example. Um, if we if we continue if we continue with the job analogy, because that's the most straightforward one that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Hmm.
um yeah, there's for me there's four key areas that we might examine. One is around your self-esteem. In that new job, if you're feeling low, if you're not talking to yourself well in that situation, if you're not recognizing your worth, if you're not stepping forward, if you're not feeling confident, it shapes the experience that you have, both in terms of the relationships that you build in that sense, the kind of those very first early markers that you give to people of your sense of character. Not to say that that's ever truly fixed, but I think many people form judgments quite quickly about individuals. And if you're coming across somebody who's introverted and shy, sometimes that can stick with you from the outset. Um, so where you are in terms of your esteem at the beginning can have a big impact on how smoothly you transition, and also some of the inner talk that you have, um, in order to help yourself to thrive. The second area is around self-efficacy and your ability to commit to action and to recognize that you are achieving each step along the way, that you can make things happen um, as opposed to have things happen to you. So your ability to I'm going to pull through, um, your ability to do the job well, or to recognize, to pull on some skills that you've had for some time, can make an impact quite quickly, and help you to feel comfortable in this new transition. It kind of gives you a bit more strength. The third area I'd say would be around your locus of control, and particularly where change is forced upon you as opposed to you've invited yourself. And there are many businesses at the moment that are going through huge change in terms of restructuring or in terms of redundancies. And there will be many people who feel that they feel powerless in the situation, or they feel other people are doing better than them, and so they're kind of giving away a lot of their power, a lot of their focus to the outside world, and that can be hugely disabling, disempowering, really. And then the final area is around, we want to teach with positive intelligence and the saboteur behaviors. A core element of that is around your emotional regulation, and how you can spot some of those thoughts coming through quite early and decide to attach to them, or not to attach to them. So I think there's a broad framework of which includes a number of different areas, and each of them you can tamper with, you can adjust in order to help yourself to thrive from the get go.
Excellent. So you think those four areas are sort of the key ingredients to helping somebody succeed in a new job:
Yeah.
self-esteem, self-efficacy, external locus of control, and emotional regulation, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what tools would you recommend to build um, self-esteem, or to build a sense of achievement, what would you recommend people to help them feel
So, um,
confident?
in terms of self-esteem, I think sometimes we can get we get caught in a judgment loop of ourselves, and we don't
Mm,
really see how others see us. We definitely don't always see ourselves as, our own life partner and our best friend. And sometimes you're making some of those shifts, and objective shifts can do a lot to boost your self-esteem. There's a wonderful exercise that I recommend and that I've kind of been through myself, which is asking people for, maybe one or two words to describe you. And it is, you feel hugely vulnerable in asking that, and approaching 10 different people in your life, so they can be best friends, lovers, your parents, people that you work with. You can say you're going through some personal development, personal growth. Kind of,
hmm
what three words would you use to describe me? And offer them back, of course, not always one way, but you can be really surprised at what people say about you. When I did the exercise myself, these huge kind of national leaders who I'd done work with, who described me as inspiring and impactful and positive. It was like, actually, yeah, that's who I am.
hmm
Um, but sometimes our moods take us higher and lower. We don't feel like that person. We feel stuck in roles or belief systems, when actually other people see some huge talent in us. So-
Yeah, I've done that exercise, a similar exercise. I've asked people that in fact, I've asked my partner Dominic because it was an exercise I was doing on a personal mastery, year-long personal mastery program. And one of the exercises was ask, seek outside yourself how other people see you, because you absolutely other people see us in a completely different light, and we all know we're our own worst critic. um, and it's a really difficult question to ask, to get that vulnerable, but I think it's an important question to ask as well, and
yeah,
it's not something to glaze over. It's one of those, if you want to build your self-esteem and you want to build your confidence, I think it's such an important question just to put yourself out there, and remind yourself that you're dealing with people that know you, and you will be really surprised about what comes back.
yeah,
And I asked the question I asked is, how do I contribute to you? Was the question I
mm,
asked Dominic. And then I asked a couple of friends, and I also asked clients,
yeah,
and how do I contribute? Or how do you see me? Or what do I bring to the table?
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so I really recommend you heed Claire's advice on that and don't glaze over it, and take that as a really powerful exercise.
Well, other ways that you can do it, and I really encourage you, particularly if you're stepping into a new job, I encourage you to stretch out over time and look to some of your past employers or some of those long-term relationships, because when you step into a new job, all of the power structures are different, all of the
Mm.
friendships are different, all of, you've almost got to restart some of those, and so you feel like you're a beginner or you're an unknown. Um, but actually, if you can be aligned, if you can be self aware about all of the excellent characteristics that you give, your ability to overcome issues in the past, your ability to really identify the root of a problem, for example, if you're in touch with those and remember what you can bring to the table, you're more likely to show up as that person, as opposed to somebody who's learning or still trying to find their way. You're showing up as somebody that can bring contribution from the outset, can bring value from the outset, and it helps you to feel more comfortable. It gets some of those quick wins in place that then boost your confidence even further to really be you and to shine.
And I think also women, especially, we're not very good at celebrating ourselves and celebrating our successes and our accomplishments. And by doing that kind of exercise, it does bring to light, actually, I've done pretty well. I've I've achieved this, and this, isn't it? It's, and when you write it down, it's even more powerful when you look at it and you go, oh my God, I have done this. I have um
Yeah. Well,
accomplished a lot. And it's, we always, I think we're so good. I mean, and we have a, in our brain we have the negative bias, which actually we are programmed and wired to focus on the negative. So it does take extra awareness to shift that and to really focus on the more positive aspects of who we are and what we've achieved.
yeah. And one of the best books that I recommend for anybody who's looking at a career transition is called Strengths Finder, and it's an asset based book. It's a straightforward questionnaire developed and administered through Gallup, but it identifies your strengths. And when you're playing in your strengths, boy, you're vibrant, you shine, you come alive. Other people are attracted to it. They can see how you fit into the overall picture. But that self awareness is it's not always something that people seek out at
Mhm.
all, you know. But yeah, Strength Finder. I think it's Don Clinton. I'll put a link in the show notes. But it's a really good, straightforward assessment. For me, my strengths are around futuristic, positivity, strategic. So and that comes through definitely from how I can see the world working, and woo, which is around uh, it's around network and collaboration and partnership and woo, woo. That's sense. So being able to step into that and go, you know what, it is me, is hugely enabling when you come into a new role, because you know that actually I'm going to show up as this person because this person is damn fine and has a very positive impact on the world, and my friends love me and I love me, and yeah, if you don't, you'll learn to.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, the very fact that you've got that new job, whether that's a new job because you've gone for a new job and you interviewed and you've gone through all the interview process, and that interview process is tough, isn't it? Like, there's back when I was in the corporate world, it was tough then,
Yep.
4 interviews and doing presentations and writing examples. And I would imagine it's even tougher now
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of an interview. And you're interviewing in front of, a group of people rather than just one or two.
Yep.
So the very fact that you've got that job is an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, for
So it's
sure.
reminding yourself, actually, out of all those people, out of those 500 people or 100 people, of all those CVs, resumes that came in, they chose me. Yeah.
Um, and that leads on really nicely to kind of the second element, which is around the self-efficacy.
Mm.
And and in this, one of my favorite activities in this aspect is called perfectly written novel. There's different variations of this tool, but you look out. Yeah, this is a journaling exercise that will probably take about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to do. And you start to break down your life um, into chunks, into 5 different chapters, depending on how old you are. So if you're 50, it'll be 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and so on. You start to look at all of the achievements that you had during that phase of your life, and then looking at the obstacles that you faced and how you overcame them, or what you learned from them. What were the gifts from the obstacles? So you embrace both the high achievements, but also kind of how you've been able to bounce back from issues that you've faced. And it's a hugely empowering exercise. It helps you to see that you can overcome nearly anything.
Mm.
I only say nearly anything because there are some things you can't overcome alone. You need other people in your life in order to do that. But you can overcome so so much. You can achieve so much. You've probably got achievements that you've forgotten about as well, because you're awesome. Um, we have belief systems that hold us back and encourage us to be humble, not to be too big for our boots, etc. But that doesn't apply to everybody. And I have this joke, and it's really mean, and it's stereotypical. But I kind of go, well, what would a man say?
Hmm.
What would a man say about this? Or what would this bro say about this? Probably go for the bro culture instead. Then unashamed,
Mm,
unapologetic
mm,
about the
mm,
big I am. And when you scratch beneath the surface, kind of they're still not achieving what they're actually saying they're achieving. Whereas there are so many of us who are introverts or who are women or for whatever reason are achieving amazing things, but don't acknowledge it for ourselves.
mm.
Um, and so when you go through that exercise, you understand. The first exercise very much around your character, and the second exercise very much around your skills and your resources and what you can bring through, what you can do, what actions you can bring through that are going to help you to thrive.
I love that exercise because that delves really deep as well. It's not, it's you're sectioning your life up and you're taking time to reflect and focus on those positives and what you've achieved. I love it. And that sort of exercise, you need time to do that, don't you? You need to create the space to do that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
again,
and
it's really worthwhile. It's powerful. I can feel the power in that.
and you find. So there's a couple of times recently when I've used it, and I won't name the individuals, but they're people that have been through a transition,
Mhm.
or are in the middle of a transition. So somebody who is being primed for a more senior role or is taking on more responsibilities, and so they are a lot of their challenges coming through about whether or not they can do it, and they're feeling they're following on succeeding from somebody else who they've got on a pedestal, and kind of going, well, they're brilliant, I'm not that person, I can't do it. And actually you need to hold the space, create a container as like, look, first off, let's see what everybody else sees. Let's see what your best friend sees about you, and
Mhm.
then also let's be really objective about the skills, about the tools, about the resources, about the education that you pull through. And let's stack that up and then come back and tell me that you can't do it. But only then. Yeah.
And so why do you think people struggle with confidence in their first year of a new job?
I think that I think it takes a lot to show up as an authentic you in a new role,
Mhm.
because you worry about how you'll be accepted. You don't necessarily have old loyalties and security in the same way that you do. So you start to step into this role within the role, um, and that brings safety. But it also means you're not being fully you. You're not fully trusting the situation that you can be you, that you can bring all of your talents and skills there, because you're still in this probationary period. You still feel like you're being actively judged. Um,
Mhm.
so I think there's many elements in that first element, in that first phase, and then I think you also come with a bunch of assumptions about how it will be or how it could be, and if that's not being realized from the off, you start to attribute that to your own action at times, or kind of I've done that wrong, or oh, this isn't quite working. To give you a simple analogy, I as a new hobby, I took up silversmithing. Went to local adult education and got involved in that, and I was so frustrated. I was so angry um, about the fact that I couldn't do it. It's like, oh, why is this not working? And in the rest of my life, I was somebody who had 25 years of experience working with Excel spreadsheets, or I could stand up and talk to 300 people on stage. Why the hell couldn't this bit of the hammer or this hammer in this simple bit of metal understand that? And the real reason behind it was that I'd forgotten to embrace the beginner as
Mhm.
well. I'd forgotten that I needed to unlearn some aspects of my life and what I was doing and learn new ones. So it put me straight back into that growth sense. But I'd gone in, kind of almost in my role as a chief operating officer, and kind of very accomplished, and I would do this as a hobby. When actually, what the metal taught me was I was a beginner, and that was all right. Just be a beginner. And have that humility. And I think when you move between organizations, particularly at a senior level, you've been pulled in with this belief that you'll hit the ground running and that you'll be this person, so you hold on to that, you try to control it. And we all know that when you try to control something, you don't really have control.
Mhm. Mhm.
And often in this world you don't have control. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, as you say, to hit the ground running and to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
But it's not possible. It's a new job, it's a new environment, it's a new company, it's new everything. And I think at any level, whether it's executive level or um, a, a, a different level within the organization, a new job, I think it's having some compassion and kindness for yourself as well, and patience,
Yeah.
and to give yourself that space to grow and to learn. It's, remind yourself you are on a learning curve,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
have some grace for yourself.
for sure. And it's the combination of learning as well, which is really important, because you can play with both aspects. And for me, particularly when I started my new business, sort of like the first few months, like, oh, I'm such a beginner, I'm really new at business, you entrepreneur. And there'll be lots of different companies that will tell you that you're new and you just need to learn their way. Um, But actually stepping back and going, well, yes, I'm new at this, and I bring 20 years of this to the table as well. And
Hmm.
I bring
Hmm.
this to the table too. Um, so there's definite power in embracing the beginner status, and there's power in realizing that even as a beginner, you bring more than any other beginner brings to the table. Yeah.
Yeah, we all have something very unique and different to offer. We all have something to offer, whatever the situation, don't we?
Yeah.
And would you say that it would be the same struggle, um, similar struggles when people change from one team to another?
Almost certainly, because and it, for a number of reasons, the relationships are different. Sometimes the roles are different, and when you look at power dynamics within a team, you might have a mother hen, for example. You might have, this is the playful person, or this is the bossy person, this is the leader. Um, so if you're moving from one team to another, you've got to work out where you fit and how you fit within those dynamics, within the task that's set. Um, so that can be quite unsettling. At times when I've seen people move between teams, they come with, particularly within an organization, they come with a reputation already, whether they know it
Mhm.
or not.
Mm.
And that can be a hidden bias before you start. So you really need to try to be aware of that, self-aware in whatever context you're in, and how that comes through, and to start to explore and not necessarily judge that, and use it if you need to. So even within one organization, when you move between teams, you can still be pushed back into beginner. And similarly, when businesses go through reorganizations, or there's a new strategy that's put in place, sometimes that forces many teams to go back to beginner. Uh, They don't necessarily acknowledge that, but when
Hmm.
it's not achieving traction, and kind of the judgment comes in. It's like, oh, okay, right, hang on. Where does our identity fit? What does this look like? Can we do this? How can we do
Again,
this? Mm,
so again, it's giving yourself space and grace, isn't it?
mm.
And that time to settle in and allow others the time as well.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
different for them. Yeah.
Um, and in in my book around change without the pain, I look at what you can do as a leader and to help your team to navigate it. And this is particularly around the point that we're talking about in from the change curve, is around where you're starting to bargain. So you've been through that initial excitement around the change that's happening, and then you can kind of plunge into negativity of, oh, this is being done to me, or you start to mourn the loss of your previous status. And then as you start to rise again, you start to bargain, you start to understand how this fits into your identity, you start to adjust your routine, and then you start to rise back up again. So um, as you're going through change, understanding where you are, giving yourself permission and space to be in that space with a desire to move forward and to help others to move forward, certainly
Hmm.
help you to thrive.
Mm. And what advice would you give somebody that to overcome imposter syndrome? 'Cause that's a biggie, isn't it?
It's okay, so it is a biggie, and we could spend an entire episode as both on
And
that
I
one.
think I think we should as well. Actually,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
definitely
but
think definitely, yeah.
yeah. So I think for me, my definition of imposter syndrome is comparing how you feel on the inside with how someone looks on the outside. Um, and that's where you have multiple gaps that you can start to understand and unpick and address. So in terms of that, how you feel on the inside, well, you know a lot of the negatives and you ignore the positives. So one of the first things that you can do is actually understand, what reality is, because the reality will help you to move forward. And also in from that dynamic of imposter, um, realize if you are putting people on pedestals,
Mm.
if some people are hugely talented at what they do, and they show up well on stage. For example, they show up with stage presence. Doesn't necessarily mean they're not terrified before they show up. It doesn't mean they haven't kind of had a quick vomit on the side. Doesn't mean they're not shaking. It doesn't mean that they didn't have a really bad day just before they turned up at the venue.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean they're not going through their own insecurities, and through their own experience. It just means that when they show up on stage, they have that presence. So I think very often when we put other people on pedestals, we make it harder for ourselves. We
Hmm.
take away some of our own power because we're fitting into this illusion of what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, we're looking at someone from the outside. We have no idea what's going on the inside. And I think you make a very, very valid point about getting real with what's real, because we're very, very good at making up stories about ourselves, those self beliefs that we have, the negative self beliefs and the limiting self beliefs. And it's actually being aware of what they are and looking at them and actually asking yourself, is that true? And what is it based on?
Yep.
Where's it
Well,
come from? What is it based on? And actually, no. I know at the heart that that's not true, because you do know, don't you?
And I love that we've started to talk about beliefs, so we will need to have a different episode of this one.
Yes.
but but I love that because the difference could be that they grew up in a household where their mum said that, or they grew up in a culture where it was common to talk about that, to celebrate that. You know, we both grew up within Britain, so we've got a culture in common, but we've seen many different cultures. And
Hmm.
one of the aspects that I really love and admire about the American culture is the confidence and the projection of the confidence and the pride. And it's really refreshing compared to a kind of English stiff upper lip and don't celebrate,
Hmm.
be humble,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's a I'm here. I'm of value. I'm of worth. Here I am. This is what I do.
Hmm.
I just love that. So sometimes the difference that you see in people is something that's an accident of birth or lineage or belief or there's
Yeah,
so many random factors that can shape it.
absolutely. And I loved when you said that about celebrating yourself and having, knowing your value. That Enzo looked up at you at that point. It was so cute. Just sits there all day. I'm like, I haven't got imposter syndrome. He knows who he is. Doesn't he? The dog knows who he is. Yeah, no
Yeah.
imposter syndrome there.
And he
Is
probably
there
doesn't
any?
see my faults.
Of course not. That puppy is a total unconditional love. And if we all grew up with unconditional love, none of us, and in that environment of supporting and loving each other and being, we wouldn't have any limiting self beliefs.
Hey, though, and this loops right the way back round to the new beginnings. Um, if we grew up with unconditional love, well, we can bring that unconditional love to ourselves.
Hmm.
Now
Absolutely.
that's a huge one, but when if you come to a point, if you're able to come to a point that you can look in the mirror and have unconditional love, empathy, respect, admiration, support, kindness, grace for who you
Compassion.
are from the
Mm.
start. That's a lifelong relationship that can take you to the moon and back, isn't it?
Yes, it
And
is. It is.
yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah, that's another episode because that's a really deep, juicy episode for sure. I love that. I mean, it's more than self-love, that unconditional love. So yes. So we're going to put the links and things into the show notes. Claire, what's your gifts? What are you offering for our audience?
so for me,
Oh, he's
postman's
off.
coming. Yeah. Um, so for me, in terms of what I'm offering, we've brought through aspects around. Uh, we've brought through a couple of different aspects. We've brought through aspects around the perfectly written novel, and so I'm happy to share that as a set of questions that people can work through. That's kind of like what does that look like? How do I start to break that down? Because it can be hugely um, empowering for people. And I'll also uh, put a link to my book Change Without the Pain online, and it's not necessarily based at that individual level, but if you're somebody who's helping others to navigate those new beginnings, there are some aspects, there's some really practical tools in there that will help you to understand, make sense of change. There's elements of the change curve to understand and have empathy for how people are affected by change, and then also lots around communication. So I recommend it as a book if you are starting to shape the environment around change more so than as an individual. But for individuals that are approaching those new beginnings, I'd love to just put together or bring across the worksheets that you can start to explore some of that. It's hugely powerful. It does make more sense when you're held accountable for it and talked through, but I think anybody can get value from that. And if you want to explore it in more detail, then just get in touch.
And I highly, highly recommend reaching out to Claire She also has a free strategy session as well, incredibly powerful and beneficial. So anybody, she's an excellent leadership coach and mentor. So if you're looking at stepping into your leadership role more, and that's not just as a leader, as
Mm.
a role as a leader, but we all have the ability to be leaders. Or if you're looking at wanting to create new strategies in your business, in your career, your next project, I highly recommend you reach out to Claire, because she's got some awesome advice and strategies,
Thank you.
and she's truly authentic and passionate about what she does. So it's been great having you here, Claire. Thank you very much. And everybody, enjoy the rest of your week. And if you have any questions, let us know. If you've liked this episode, please like it, please share it, and subscribe. It helps us to continue bringing great content. So until next time, we'll see you
Mm.
soon.
Cheers. Yeah.